So this is the profit and loss account in Xero. This is the demo company. And the information on this profit and loss account is quite representative of a general company. Okay, so when you are thinking about where to code things to, when you're doing your bookkeeping, think about what the end goal is. So when you are creating your customer invoices, when you are posting your supplier invoices, when you are posting the receipts for the things that you buy while you're out on the road, when you post them into Xero, the code that you choose is going to impact your reports. So it's either going to impact your profit and loss account or it's going to impact your balance sheet. So what do I mean by it's going to impact? So let's say you raise a sales invoice to one of your customers. When you raise that sales invoice, you're going to code it to a sales income line on your profit and loss account. So if you had one customer, let's use this information in Xero demo, you had one customer and you made a sale to that customer for £32,886.92. That sale would sit in your sales line. Now, just remember, if you are VAT registered, the profit and loss account figures only show amounts before the VAT. So these are your net figures. You'll never have VAT on your profit and loss account. So let's say you've made a sale to your customer, you've raised an invoice, you're going to post it to a sales code. So you're thinking, okay, that's great, but how do I know what a sales code is in Xero? And the codes are all set up in a chart of accounts, which I'll show a little bit later. But for ease of this demo, when you run your profit and loss account report in Xero, you can add the account codes onto that report by putting that check box on there. So you can now see the codes within Xero and the name of that code. So you can see that a 200 code in Xero is for sales. So let's say for that sale that you made to that customer, you had to buy something. So say you supplied that customer with a new table, let's say you sell tables and chairs. In order to sell a table and chair, you're either going to have to buy one secondhand and you might be upcycling it, or you might make them from scratch. Either way, you're going to have to buy something in order to sell it on. And those things that you buy that you would then sell on would sit under your cost of sales. And in this case, it's a 300 code purchases. So let's say you bought some wood and some glue and some screws, and you've spent £1,950 on the wood and some glue and some screws and possibly some paint. And you've used that to make a really lovely looking chair or table that you've then sold for £32,000. So that's your turnover and that's your cost of sales. So your cost of sales are directly attributable to your income. So you've got to buy something in order to sell something. Okay? Everything else, the majority of everything else, would then be an admin cost or an overhead cost. So things like advertising and marketing. So say you've got someone to build you a new website or you've put an article in a magazine, that would be an advertising and marketing cost. Your accountancy fees, obviously does what it says on the tin. Lots of the account codes that are already set up in Xero as a default are going to suit your business because they've got quite a good generic list of the codes that most business owners will need to use. So you can probably search for something that fits to what you've bought. So if you rent some office space, you would code it to rent. If you have a work telephone, you would code it to telephone. If you've bought some stamps, you would code it to postage, etc. Okay, so does it actually matter where you code things to? Well, you wouldn't want to put your accountancy fees in as income. That doesn't make sense. So it matters if it's income and it matters if it's an expense. Does it actually matter? I.e., does anybody care? Does HMRC care if you put your accountancy fees under postage? No, they don't care. They're not going to come knocking on your door and say, you've put that in the wrong place, you've put that in the wrong code. Your accountant might at year end go, we've noticed that you've got some items in the wrong place. We're going to reallocate them for you. So why would they do that if nobody cares? Why would your accountant move things if actually nobody cares? So there's a couple of reasons. The first reason is they are trying to give you some year-end accounts that make some kind of sense. So it'd be really hard as a business owner to say, okay, how much am I spending on advertising and marketing if within that code you've also got your telephone bill or your rent? It'd be really hard to see what's been going on in your business and where you've spent things to. So your accountant might move things around so that when they send you your year-end accounts, they can say, right, these are the types of things you've bought, and these are the categories and the amounts that you spent. There's another reason why they would need to recategorize things, in that is some of the items that you pay for in your business are what we call disallowable expenses. So, for example, client entertaining, probably the most obvious one that we all know, or you may not know if you're new to business, is although your company can pay for client entertaining, so you've taken them out for a lovely meal, it's not an allowable expense. What does that mean? An allowable expense means it is deducted off of your income to reduce your operating profit. So let's just take a step back. You get charged, if you're a limited company, you get charged corporation tax based on your operating profit. So in this example, they've got an operating profit of £13,645. The corporation tax will be charged on that amount. However, we can see that they have spent £44.66 on business entertaining. That's fine, the company can pay for that, but it will not be allowable for corporation tax as a corporation tax deduction. So your accountant will see that you've made an operating profit of £13,645, but they will add back on the £44.66 you spent on entertaining. And that new operating profit with the added business entertaining back on is what you pay tax on. So your accountant will want to see things in the right bucket, things in the right category, because of some of these things they have to add back on. But for you as a business owner, you want to try and make sure you've got them in the right bucket or the right category so that you can see how much you're spending in your business. Because if you're not looking at how much you're spending in your business, you don't know if you need to increase some costs. You might want to increase your advertising, or actually you might say that spending £8,700 on my advertising didn't pay off, and I actually want to reduce that spend next time. So if you put your costs into the same category, be consistent where you're posting things to, you've then got this snapshot, this view of your business and where you're spending your money. That's your profit and loss account. That is where most of your expenses will go. So I can hear you saying, fine, where do the rest of my expenses go if only most of them go in my profit and loss account? So that is where we would need to look at your balance sheet. So let's run a balance sheet in the demo company. I always right mouse click and open a new tab. So this is the balance sheet in the demo company. There's not a huge amount going on here because it's demo data. Let's see if I can get slightly more data up by, here we go. So Some of the things you buy, some of the things you spend money on, don't sit on your profit and loss account. The things that sit on your balance sheet are big items, fixed asset items. So these are like your computer. So if you're buying a new laptop, you wouldn't code it to anywhere on your profit and loss account. You wouldn't code it to any of these 400 codes. You would code it to your balance sheet. And let's just put the account codes on the balance sheet. So in Xero, the asset codes are 700 codes. So you would code it there. What else might you code to a balance sheet? So if you had, and Xero hasn't got any here, but if you had a loan, so say you had a bounce back loan from COVID times that you're now repaying every month, that loan would sit on your balance sheet. So when you make that repayment every month, you would code that repayment back to your balance sheet loan account. And it's probably going to be an 800 code. You would code when you make your VAT payment, you would code that to the 820 VAT account. Okay, so there are things, and it's probably better if I do a different video on your balance sheet, but there are things you are going to be coding to your balance sheet and not your profit and loss account. And that will completely depend on how complicated your company is, whether you've got loans, whether you've maybe got a car that you're leasing, whether you've got any bounce back loans, that type of thing will sit on your balance sheet. But for most people, for most of the things that you're spending money on, it will hit your profit and loss account. So earlier in the video, I talked about your chart of accounts, and your chart of accounts is basically a list of all these numbers here and their descriptions. So your profit and loss account and your balance sheet. And when you open up Xero, Xero has a default chart of accounts. Let's go and have a look at it. Look at it. And this is automatically set up in Xero when you open a Xero account. And it puts things in here that most business owners use. And sales always a 200 code. Cost of sales are a 300 code. Or your admin and overheads are a 400 code. You can see there's quite a lot of them here. Quite a lot of them. And then you've got your balance sheet codes, which start at 600 and go all the way down to the 900s. Okay, there's lots on here. There's lots of things you might never use. So don't worry if you don't ever use them. They're not intended to be used all the time. So you can add to this list. You can create new codes. You can change the names of the codes. So say if you don't like it being called purchases and you want to call it direct costs, or you just want to say, this is wood, glue and screws so that you remember it, you can change things in the chart of accounts. You just click into them and make the changes. However, please be very careful if you're going to make changes, because the way the chart of accounts is set up will determine where things sit in your profit and loss account and your balance sheet. So I could do another video on setting up and editing the chart of accounts, probably not one for now, because we're just discussing where you post things for now. But in summary, nobody really cares where you post them. However, if you want to monitor how much you're spending on things, then be consistent and post them in something that makes sense to you. Also help your accountant at the year end by putting them into codes that are consistent and something that makes sense to them. And you will also occasionally have things that you need to post to your balance sheet, which hopefully you'll be familiar with because you're speaking to your accountant at year end and they can advise on those types of things. But if you've got any questions about balance sheet codes as opposed to profit and loss account codes, then please put them down in the comments and I will answer them for you.